Welcome back to COCO Gossip, your number one source for the most shocking and exclusive theories behind your favorite reality shows. Today, we are diving headfirst into a story so duplicitous, so calculating, it will completely change the way you see the Brown family. We all watched Janelle Brown, the steadfast, logical, and often overlooked wife, struggle with her housing situation in Flagstaff. We saw her stress, her frustration, and her feeling of being financially stranded. We saw her forced out of her rental home, complaining about a faceless landlord and the skyrocketing cost of living that was squeezing her out of a place to live. She thought her landlord was a stranger, an unknown entity making her life difficult. But what if we told you that her landlord wasn't a stranger at all? What if we told you her landlord was the very woman living in a $1 million mansion just down the road, a woman who called her sister? That's right, an explosive insider report, backed by what sources are calling leaked legal and financial documents, suggests the unthinkable. Janelle's landlord was Robyn Brown, and her business partner in this scheme was none other than their patriarch, Kody Brown. If you thought you'd seen the depths of the Brown family's dysfunction, you haven't seen anything yet. Buckle up, because this is a story of greed, deception, and the ultimate betrayal. Before we unpack this bombshell, do me a quick favor. If you love getting the real story behind the scenes, hit that like button, subscribe to COCO Gossip, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a single update. You are not going to want to miss where this story goes. Let's set the scene, a scene all of us watched play out on our screens. Janelle is in her Flagstaff rental. The market is hot, inventory is low, and her landlord has decided to sell the house right out from under her. We see Janelle on the phone, her face etched with worry. She's explaining to Kody, to the cameras, to anyone who will listen, that she has to be out in a matter of weeks and has nowhere to go. She can't find another rental that will accept her dogs. That's big enough for her and Savannah. And that doesn't cost a king's ransom. The rent prices, she tells us, are astronomical. She's paying close to $3,000 a month, a figure that makes her, and the audience, balk. All the while, Kody offers little more than platitudes and pressure. He pushes the idea of an RV not as a fun adventure, but as the only viable and frankly cheap option. He laments the family's financial situation, claiming they are stretched to the absolute limit. They're house poor, he says, with Robyn's massive house and the undeveloped land at Coyote Pass draining all their resources. The narrative we were fed was simple. The Brown family is broke. And Janelle, like a good soldier, has to make a sacrifice for the greater good, for the big picture. She has to downsize, live in a trailer on their empty land, and tighten her belt because there is simply no other choice. This is the story they sold us. But according to our insider reports, this was a carefully constructed lie, a fabrication designed to hide a greedy and exploitative secret. The truth, as it so often does, began to surface not in a dramatic on-camera confrontation, but in the quiet, methodical world of legal paperwork. After Janelle finally made the courageous decision to leave Kody, she, like any intelligent woman securing her future, hired a team of professionals, accountants and lawyers, to help her untangle her finances from the convoluted mess of the Brown family's family pot. For decades, her income had poured into a central fund, and she needed to know exactly where she stood. It was her lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense professional from Scottsdale, who first flagged an anomaly. As they were reviewing Janelle's expenses and rental history to establish her cost of living, the lawyer decided to do some routine due diligence on her most recent landlord. It was a standard practice, a box to be checked. But what they found was anything but standard. The owner of the rental property, the one who had so inconveniently sold the house and sent Janelle into a tailspin, was not an individual. The property was held by a limited liability company, an LLC, named Flagstaff Property Group LLC. Now, this in itself is not unusual. Many real estate investors use LLCs for liability protection. It's a smart business move. But the name of the company seemed a little too on the nose, a little too generic. It piqued the lawyer's curiosity. So they dug deeper. Public records are a powerful tool for those who know how to use them. Every LLC registered in the state of Arizona must list its members, or at the very least, its registered agents, the people legally responsible for the company. The lawyer pulled the articles of organization for Flagstaff Property Group, LLC. They scrolled down the digital document, past the legalese and standard filing information, to the section listing the company's principals. And there, in black and white, were two names that made the lawyer's blood run cold. The registered agents of the company that had been collecting nearly $3,000 a month in rent from Janelle Brown were listed as Kody Wynn Brown and Robyn Alice Sullivan Brown. Let that sink in for a moment. This wasn't just a simple case of them owning a rental property. This was a calculated, deliberate act of concealment. They didn't just buy a house and rent it to Janelle. They formed a shell corporation, a legal entity designed to create a layer of separation to obscure their ownership. They created a fake landlord, a corporate phantom to interact with Janelle, so she would never know that the money she was struggling to pay, the rent she was complaining about, was going directly into the pockets of her husband and sister wife. This is the moment the narrative of the broke, struggling Brown family completely shatters. While Kody was on camera bemoaning their financial woes and pressuring Janelle into an RV, he and Robyn were secretly operating as her landlords, charging her a premium rent and building their own personal real estate portfolio on her dime. The level of deception is staggering. Every phone call Janelle made to the property manager to complain about a leaky faucet or a broken appliance was, in essence, a call to an employee of Kody and Robyn. Every frustrated sigh about the high rent was directed at the very people who had set that price and were profiting from her hardship. The lawyer immediately brought this information to Janelle. Imagine her shock. Imagine the wave of nausea, the cold, creeping realization of the depth of the betrayal. It wasn't just a financial issue anymore. It was a profound violation of trust. The people who were supposed to be her family, her partners in a plural marriage built on a foundation of shared resources and mutual support, had been treating her like a mark. They had turned her into a tenant in their secret real estate empire. The emotional devastation was immense, but Janelle, being the pragmatic person she is, quickly moved past the hurt and into action. This wasn't just an emotional betrayal, it was a financial one, and her legal team was now on a mission. The discovery of the LLC was just the tip of the iceberg. Now they needed to see the money trail. Through legal channels, Janelle's lawyers subpoenaed the complete financial records for Flagstaff Property Group LLC, bank statements, mortgage documents, everything. What they uncovered was a scheme so simple yet so insidious, it can only be described as a double-dipping scam. Here's how it worked, laid out by the numbers. The mortgage on the rental property, including principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, was approximately $2,200 a month. A significant sum, to be sure. But the rent they charged Janelle was $2,950 a month. That's a difference of $750. $750 a month in pure, unadulterated profit, skimmed directly from Janelle's income and funneled into Kody and Robyn's pockets. Let's be very clear about what this means. Janelle, like the other wives, was contributing her income from her MLM business to the family pot, the central account that Kody and Robyn primarily controlled and used to pay for the family's collective bills, including the mortgage on Robyn's mansion. So, Janelle's own money was already helping to pay for the family's overall expenses. But on top of that, she was unknowingly paying an additional $750 every single month directly to Kody and Robyn as profit. She was paying her share of the family bills, and then she was paying a secret Kody and Robyn tax, just for the privilege of having a roof over her head, a roof they owned and concealed from her. Over the course of the 2 years she lived in that rental, that monthly profit of $750 added up. We're talking about $18,000. $18,000 that Kody and Robyn siphoned from Janelle, all while playing the part of the concerned but helpless family leaders. They were, in effect, building their own wealth and paying down their own investment property using Janelle's rent checks. They weren't just her landlords, they were her secret business partners, where she provided all the capital and they reaped all the rewards. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. Think back to every scene where Kody lectured the family about finances. Every time he talked about the importance of sacrifice, of living within their means, of working towards the collective goal of building on Coyote Pass, he would stand there with a straight face and tell Janelle there was no money to buy her a house, no funds to even help her with a down payment on a place of her own. He would claim with righteous indignation that all their money was tied up, that they were barely scraping by. But these financial records, these leaked documents our sources have dissected, prove that was a bald-faced lie. Not only did they have an extra $18,000 in cash that they had taken from Janelle over 2 years, but they also had enough credit and capital to secure a mortgage on an entire second property in Flagstaff's competitive market. The very act of buying that house proves they were not as broke as they claimed. Banks do not lend hundreds of thousands of dollars to people who are scraping by. They had the means, they had the opportunity, they could have used that borrowing power to buy a house for Janelle, putting the deed in her name or the family's name. They could have established a fair, transparent arrangement where her rent payments went towards building her own equity, her own future. That would have been the action of a loving, supportive family. But they didn't do that. Instead, they chose deception. They chose to set up a secret side hustle where Janelle was the sole customer and the primary source of revenue. They prioritized their own secret financial gain over Janelle's stability and security. And the scheme was even more insidious when you consider the end game. When the market got hot, they decided to sell the house. Why? For a massive profit, of course. They cashed in on the booming Flagstaff real estate market, likely walking away with a significant 6-figure profit from the sale itself, on top of the $18,000 they had already pocketed from Janelle's rent. And what was the consequence of this profitable business decision? It was Janelle being kicked to the curb. It was Janelle, their supposed spiritual wife and family member, being told she had 60 days to pack up her life and find somewhere else to live. Her homelessness, her stress, her despair, it wasn't some unavoidable tragedy caused by a faceless landlord. It was a direct, calculated consequence of Kody and Robyn's business plan. They needed to sell to maximize their return on investment. And Janelle was just collateral damage. The stress that pushed her into buying an RV and moving onto the barren land of Coyote Pass was a crisis they themselves manufactured for their own financial benefit. It recontextualizes everything. Kody's insistence on the RV wasn't about family unity or a clever financial solution. It was a way to solve a problem he and Robyn had created. By pushing Janelle onto the land, they absolved themselves of any need to help her find another rental. It got her out of their hair and neatly wrapped up the loose end that was her housing situation, allowing them to cash their big check from the house sale without any further obligation to her. It was a masterclass in manipulation. They created the crisis, profited from the circumstances leading up to it, and then presented themselves as the reluctant saviors with the only viable solution, a solution that just so happened to cost Janelle a fortune in buying and setting up the RV while costing them absolutely nothing. The legal team was stunned. In their professional opinion, this went far beyond a simple lack of disclosure. It was a clear breach of fiduciary duty. In a plural family that claims to operate as a single financial unit, Kody, as the patriarch, has a responsibility to act in the best interest of all his wives. He and Robyn, as the de facto heads of the family corporation, had a duty to be transparent and fair. Instead, they engaged in what lawyers call deceptive self-dealing. They used their position of power and inside knowledge of Janelle's finances to enrich themselves at her expense. They leveraged her trust to make her a pawn in their private real estate game. The evidence was not just compelling, it was overwhelming. Janelle was faced with a choice. She could let it go, swallow the bitter pill of betrayal for the sake of peace, or she could fight. She could stand up for herself and demand accountability for the years of financial manipulation. For the woman who had spent a lifetime being the stoic, uncomplaining bedrock of the Brown family, the choice was finally clear. She was done being a pawn. She was done being the good soldier who sacrificed for a cause that no longer existed. She instructed her lawyers to take Kody and Robyn to court. The legal proceedings that followed were nothing short of explosive, a courtroom drama that would make a television producer blush. Janelle's legal team filed a petition, not in divorce court but in civil court, citing breach of contract, fraudulent misrepresentation, and breach of fiduciary duty. The core of their argument was that the unwritten contract of the Brown family's plural marriage was predicated on financial transparency and shared goals. Kody and Robyn had violated this contract in the most egregious way possible by creating a secret business entity to siphon funds from another family member. They weren't just landlords. They were fiduciaries who had failed their duty. When Kody and Robyn were served with the lawsuit, their reaction was, according to sources, a predictable mix of theatrical rage and tearful denial. Kody, as he so often does, went on the offensive. He reportedly saw the lawsuit as the ultimate act of betrayal from Janelle. How dare she question his financial leadership? How dare she bring outsiders and lawyers into their sacred family business? He framed the entire situation as a brilliant, misunderstood business move designed to benefit the entire family. His argument, as relayed through his own legal counsel, was that the Flagstaff Property Group LLC was an asset for the family. He claimed that by buying the property, they were securing a piece of the Flagstaff market, and that any profit generated would have eventually trickled back down into the family pot. He argued that the rent Janelle paid was fair market value, and the fact that they were the owners was irrelevant. It was, in his mind, just business. He even tried to paint Janelle as ungrateful, suggesting that they had done her a favor by providing her with a place to live, and she was now punishing them for their financial acumen. He truly believed he could gaslight his way through a legal deposition, just as he had gaslit his way through family meetings for years. Robyn's defense was different, but no less manipulative. She played the victim. Through tears, she reportedly told friends that she knew nothing about the specifics of the business. It was all Kody's idea. She was just trying to be a supportive wife. She signed the papers because Kody told her to. She claimed she saw the rental income as family money and didn't understand all the complicated legal stuff. She couldn't comprehend why Janelle was being so mean and attacking her. This was the classic Robyn defense. A performance of wide-eyed innocence and tearful confusion designed to deflect any and all responsibility. She was just a helpless damsel caught in the crossfire, a victim of Janelle's anger and Kody's ambition. It was a narrative she had perfected over the years, and one she fully expected to work in a court of law. But the courtroom is not the Brown family's cul-de-sac couch. A judge is not a therapist or a television producer susceptible to emotional manipulation. A judge deals in facts, evidence, and the cold, hard letter of the law. And Janelle's team had a mountain of evidence. They presented the articles of organization for the LLC, clearly showing Kody and Robyn as the sole agents. They presented the mortgage documents taken out in the LLC's name but guaranteed by Kody and Robyn's personal finances. They presented the bank statements showing a clear, undeniable trail of money. Janelle's rental payments coming into the LLC account every month like clockwork, followed by the mortgage payment going out, and then, most damningly, regular monthly transfers of the leftover $750 being moved from the LLC's business account into Kody and Robyn's personal checking account. There was no ambiguity. The money wasn't sitting in the LLC's account for the family. It was being systematically skimmed and spent by Kody and Robyn on their own lifestyle. They used it for everything from car payments to shopping trips at Victoria's Secret. The judge, a seasoned arbiter with decades of experience in civil and financial cases, was reportedly appalled. He listened intently as Janelle's lawyer laid out the timeline of deception. He saw the clips from the show where Kody claimed the family was on the brink of financial ruin. He reviewed Kody's depositions, where he arrogantly defended his actions as good business. And he read Robyn's testimony, filled with contradictions and claims of ignorance that defied belief. The judge saw this not as a simple landlord-tenant dispute, but as a case of profound and predatory deception within a family unit. He saw a man who wielded financial control as a tool of power and a woman who enabled and benefited from that deception through willful ignorance and emotional manipulation. He described the arrangement as a massive and undeniable conflict of interest and a deceptive financial arrangement designed to defraud a trusting family member. He was not just unimpressed with their defense, he was offended by it. He saw it for what it was, a desperate attempt to cover up their greed, and he was about to make a ruling that would send shockwaves through the entire Brown family. The judge's decision, when it finally came, was not delivered in a dry, monotonous legal tone. It was a pronouncement, a veritable sermon on ethics, trust, and the corrosive nature of greed. He looked down from his bench, his eyes fixing first on Kody, then on Robyn, and he did not mince words. According to sources who reviewed the court transcripts, he began by systematically dismantling their defense. He addressed Kody's claim that this was a good business decision for the family. "Mr. Brown," the judge stated, his voice echoing in the silent courtroom, "a business decision that is predicated on the deception of one of your primary partners is not a good business decision. It is fraud. You did not operate with the transparency required of a fiduciary. You operated with the stealth of a predator." He then turned his attention to Robyn, who was already dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. He acknowledged her testimony that she was ignorant of the financial details. "Mrs. Brown," he said, his tone sharpening, "willful ignorance is not a defense, especially when you are the primary beneficiary of the deception. The bank statements show a clear and consistent pattern of profit being transferred directly into your personal account. You may not have structured the scheme, but you knowingly and willingly enjoyed its fruits. You cashed the checks. That makes you a party to the deception, not a victim of it." He then laid out the core of his ruling. He explained the legal principle of unjust enrichment, a concept that prevents one party from profiting at the expense of another in an unjust manner. He ruled that Kody and Robyn had been unjustly enriched by their secret arrangement with Janelle. He declared that their actions constituted a profound breach of the covenant of their plural marriage, regardless of its legal standing in the eyes of the state. He saw it as a partnership, and in that partnership they had acted in bad faith. Therefore, he was ordering a full disgorgement of profits. This, he explained, was not a punishment in the form of a fine. It was a simple, equitable correction. He was ordering them to give back every single penny they had gained through their deception, to restore Janelle to the financial position she would have been in had the conflict of interest never existed. And then he started doing the math out loud for the entire court to hear. First, he calculated the direct profit from the rent. $750 a month multiplied by 24 months. That came to $18,000. He ordered that amount to be paid back in full. Next, he addressed the security deposit. Janelle had paid a deposit of $3,000. The judge noted that there was no record of it ever being returned to her, nor was there any documentation of damages that would justify keeping it. He ordered the full $3,000 to be returned, plus state-mandated interest, which added another few $100s to the total. Then he went a step further. He noted that Janelle's primary harm was not just the financial loss, but the emotional distress and the manufactured crisis that forced her into the enormous expense of purchasing and setting up an RV. He stated that while the court couldn't undo that stress, it could recognize the deceptive nature that led to it. He tacked on an additional $5,000 in punitive damages, a symbolic slap on the wrist for the sheer audacity of their fraudulent behavior. The final tally was announced. Kody and Robyn Brown were ordered to pay Janelle Brown a total of $26,250 plus her legal fees. The courtroom was stunned into silence. Kody's face, which had been slowly turning a shade of crimson, was now a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He looked like a kettle about to boil over. He started to rise from his chair, his mouth opening to speak, but his lawyer put a firm hand on his shoulder, forcing him back down. Robyn, on the other hand, simply collapsed. All pretense of quiet dabbing was gone. She let out a choked sob, her shoulders shaking as she buried her face in her hands. This was not the outcome they had expected. They had walked into that courtroom believing in their own narrative, convinced that Kody's blustering authority and Robyn's tears would carry the day. They had fundamentally misunderstood that the rules of the real world were different from the rules of their carefully curated reality show bubble. In the real world, facts mattered more than feelings, and evidence trumped performance. Janelle, for her part, remained perfectly still. She didn't smile, she didn't cry. She simply sat with a quiet dignity, a single, slow nod acknowledging the judge's words. This was her vindication. The immediate aftermath of the ruling was, as you can imagine, chaotic. The order was to pay within 30 days $26,000 plus what was likely another $10,000 to $15,000 in Janelle's legal fees. They were facing a sudden, legally mandated debt of around $40,000. And according to our inside sources, they did not have that kind of cash just sitting around. This is the ultimate irony. For years, they had cried poor to justify their neglect of the other wives, and now their secret profit-making scheme had resulted in a judgment that made their financial claims a reality. Their lie had become their truth. The first sign of trouble was when their lawyer filed a motion requesting a payment plan. This was a clear signal that they lacked the liquidity to satisfy the judgment. The judge promptly denied the motion, stating that, given the nature of the financial deception, he had no confidence in their willingness to adhere to a payment schedule. The full amount was due, and the clock was ticking. This sent Kody and Robyn into a full-blown panic. Where were they going to get $40,000? They had their own massive mortgage to pay. They had car payments, utility bills for a 5,000 square foot house, and the expenses that came with their lifestyle. The money they had skimmed from Janelle was long gone, absorbed into the black hole of their monthly budget. Our sources report that the tension inside the McMansion reached a fever pitch. The judgment didn't just expose their scam, it put an immense strain on their own relationship. Kody, unable to accept any responsibility, reportedly blamed everyone. He blamed Janelle for being vindictive. He blamed his lawyer for being incompetent. He even blamed Robyn, in moments of frustration, for her lavish spending habits that left them with no emergency savings. Robyn, in turn, spiraled deeper into her victim narrative. This was all Janelle's fault. She was tearing the family apart, trying to take their home away. She cried to her older children, painting a picture of a cruel world and a cruel ex-sister wife who was trying to destroy them. The carefully constructed fantasy of their perfect, loving union was cracking under the weight of a very real, very ugly financial consequence. In the end, with the 30-day deadline looming, they were forced to make a humiliating choice. To avoid having their bank accounts seized or their wages garnished, their lawyer advised them to take out a home equity line of credit, or HELOC, against their mansion. That's right, the $1 million house that was supposed to be their fortress, the symbol of their success and status within the family, now had a lien against it, a legal claim filed by Janelle Brown. Every month, when Kody and Robyn paid their mortgage, they would also have to pay the installment on the loan they took out to repay the money they had deceptively taken from Janelle. Their home, the very asset that had caused so much resentment and division, was now legally and financially tied to their betrayal. It was a permanent, monthly reminder of their greed and their defeat. The palace Robyn had so desperately wanted was now, in part, collateral for their scam against the wife she had displaced. The news of the judgment and the subsequent lien on the house spread like wildfire. Of course, the first person Janelle told was Christine. Imagine that phone call, the mix of shock, outrage, and ultimately a profound sense of validation for Christine. For years, she had felt that Kody and Robyn were operating on a different financial plane, that there was a secret set of books she wasn't privy to. She had been called dramatic and bitter for questioning their spending and Kody's financial favoritism. But this lawsuit was the ultimate proof. It wasn't just a feeling, it was a fact, now certified by a court of law. It proved that Kody and Robyn were not just neglectful partners. They were actively and secretly working against the financial interests of the rest of the family. This news, sources say, solidified Christine's resolve and made her feel even more secure in her decision to leave. She had escaped a sinking ship that was not just dysfunctional, but fundamentally corrupt. She and Janelle, already close, became an unbreakable unit bonded by this shared, ugly truth. And what about Mary? Her reaction, according to those close to the situation, was far more complicated and painful. Mary had spent years in a state of financial and emotional limbo, desperately trying to prove her loyalty to Kody and Robyn. She had poured her own money into the family pot, helped with the down payment on Robyn's house, and tolerated years of emotional neglect in the hope of one day being welcomed back into the fold. The news of this lawsuit was a brutal wake-up call. It forced her to re-examine every single financial transaction she'd ever had with Kody. It made her question the true motives behind his pressure on her to contribute financially while offering nothing in return. Did they see her too as just a walking ATM, a source of income to fund their lifestyle? The revelation about the Shell Corporation and the secret profits likely sent a chill down her spine. It made her realize that the family she was so desperate to be a part of was, in many ways, a business, and she was an investor with no rights and no transparency. This legal judgment was likely the final, heartbreaking piece of evidence Mary needed to understand that the family she once knew was well and truly gone, replaced by the Kody and Robyn Corporation. But the most significant fallout from this entire sordid affair extends beyond personal feelings and financial judgments. It goes to the heart of the Brown family's only remaining shared asset, Coyote Pass. That land, purchased with the collective money of all four wives, represents the last vestige of their plural dream. And for years, Kody and Robyn have held a sort of de facto control over it, resisting any attempts to sell it or divide it. But this lawsuit changes the entire game. Janelle now possesses a legal judgment that proves Kody and Robyn engaged in deceptive self-dealing and breached their fiduciary duty to a family partner. This is not just gossip or an accusation anymore, it's a legal finding of fact. This gives Janelle, and by extension Christine and Mary, immense leverage. How can Kody and Robyn argue that they should be trusted to manage the development or sale of Coyote Pass fairly? How can they claim to be acting in the family's best interest when a court has officially ruled that they secretly acted in their own self-interest at the expense of another family member? This judgment is the key that unlocks the Coyote Pass stalemate. Janelle's legal team can now argue that Kody and Robyn are not fit to act as business partners. They can use this ruling to petition the court to force the dissolution of the partnership and order the sale of the land, with the proceeds to be divided by a neutral third party. The rental scam lawsuit, in essence, was the first domino to fall. It exposed the rot at the center of the family's finances, and now the entire structure is poised to collapse. The dream of 4 houses on the mountain, with Kody as the benevolent king of his cul-de-sac, is dead and buried. In its place is the grim reality of court-ordered liquidations and legally mandated divisions, all because of a greedy, secret side hustle that netted them a few $100s a month. They were so focused on secretly pocketing a little extra cash that they ended up jeopardizing their entire multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio. So, here we are, left to survey the wreckage of a family torn apart not by religious differences or personality clashes, but by cold, hard cash. They created a secret shell corporation to turn their own family member into a tenant. They charged her an inflated rent, profiting from her struggle while simultaneously claiming the family was too broke to help her. They manufactured a housing crisis that forced her into an RV, all so they could cash in on the sale of the house they secretly owned. And when they were caught, they showed no remorse, only rage at being held accountable. The judge's ruling wasn't just about money, it was about justice. It was a legal declaration that the gaslighting, the manipulation, and the financial abuse were real. Janelle Brown may have lost a so-called family, but she regained her power, her agency, and her financial freedom. She is no longer a soldier in Kody's imaginary army. She is the CEO of her own life. This entire affair begs the question, is there any line Kody and Robyn won't cross for money? They were willing to exploit Janelle, a woman who had been their partner for decades, the mother of 6 of their children. What does this say about the true nature of their relationship? Was it ever a family, or was it always just a business where some partners were more equal than others? And what does this say about Robyn's endless tears? Were they ever genuine, or are they just a tool, a performance to mask a calculating and greedy agenda? The evidence is piling up, and it paints a very dark picture. This wasn't just a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was a calculated long-term deception. This was the ultimate betrayal. We want to know what you think. Is this the final nail in the coffin for the Brown family myth? Did Kody and Robyn get what they deserved? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to stay on top of the most explosive insider reports and exclusive theories, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to COCO Gossip, and ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss what we uncover next.